There's like a Twitter account that's like the name of the account is like, did Jeff Bezos decide to end world hunger today? And every day they just tweet no. And it's like, if I was Jeff Bezos, it's like, you should just do it one day and then just be like, now leave me alone.
Yeah.
Like, get off my back. Let me go to space.
Let me eat iguana meat in peace.
Is that a thing he's doing now?
Oh, yeah. He has a really exotic diet. I'm not like a Jeff Bezos aficionado, but I just know that, you know, if you look at Jeff Bezos to like 2003, which is, I think, right around the time when he, I mean, obviously came into a lot more money then because online shopping and all that. But from like the 94 to 2003, he was like letting his hair recede. And there's nothing wrong with that he's bald. I like that he owns it, but it's like somehow he makes being bald even douchey.
No, absolutely. As a bald man, I will say that we do not claim Jeff Bezos.
Did you see the fucking topographical shot of him in the spaceship? You could see his shiny head from like Anyways.
Wasn't his brother who went with him is also completely bald too?
Well, that means that maybe I'll be joining you at some point then, I guess.
Maybe, but just for the listeners, if in case this is in the episode,
right.
I'm completely bald. Zach has a beautiful head of hair, and that hairline is not, it's not going back at all.
No, and I've decided that if I could choose, I would rather go here than creep at the corners. But
go here as in the back?
Yeah, sorry. On the back of the...
Well, that's how our father went bald, and he didn't... He's not bald, but that's how Dad is balding. And I wouldn't say that he started balding in a noticeable way until like a decade ago, so...
Yeah, and then there are those people, usually in Hollywood, who creep at the corners, and it just stops at a certain point, and it like...
Yeah.
You know, like Will Arnett, who I'm sure wears a hairpiece, but like...
That guy's bald.
Yeah, I know. It's sad.
You know, Joel McHale finally admitted that he's wearing a hairpiece.
I'm not familiar.
Community.
Oh, good.
Because I was on that for a long time, but
Will Arnett's hair got so much thicker after.
That's
he
how
came
you
into,
know.
Right.
It's like he's been in show business for 20 years now, or we've been aware of him for at least 20 years. And
right.
He was balding when we first saw him, and
Big
somehow he has way more hair now.
Right. Can't all be Jason Bateman.
No. I was wondering, do you think Al Pacino's hair is ridiculous? Obviously, and clearly, obviously, he like dyes it.
And wears like I think he weaves hair into it too.
But yeah, when I was looking at him in Heat, I'm like,
oh, I think that's still his real hair.
You think so?
I think, yeah. I mean, I think Al Pacino's old. Like, he's in his 80s. If probably 80. So he was 28 years ago. So, I mean, he would have been still in his 50s. So I think, yeah, he still has a good hair.
It's just so... I mean, maybe it was just the style, too, but that's ridiculous. But it's just so coiffed.
Oh, I thought of another funny thing about Heat that I know, like, trivia-wise from the IMDb rabbit hole. So, yeah, I knew that line of, she's got a great ass!
Because she's got a great ass!
That's pretty good.
And you got your head all the way up it!
Oh, whoa, I forgot about that. But yeah, so Hank is there. That's one take. His reaction is real because it's improvised. And it feels improvised. But
yeah, it feels improvised because it's insane and shouldn't be in the movie.
But his character, that Michael Mann was like, no thanks, was supposed to have a cocaine habit, which I think would have added an interesting dimension to it. But the movie's too long as it is. So a lot of his
Wait, this was in the script and they cut it, or that was what Pacino brought?
Pacino brought probably to the character. Maybe it was in the script, but they ultimately cut it. And a lot of his insanity, even though it's just Al Pacino being him in that era, is based on my character has a cocaine problem.
Well, okay, that I mean, I would say on the one hand, that does explain some of the behavior of that character in Heat, but I also will say that seems to be the background information that Al Pacino is bringing to every character he has performed since the 1980s.
And famously, I mean, he's very well insulated. I wouldn't know if he did, but I think Al Pacino is one of those actors that what's the word? Not a teetotaler, but never actually matched what his character seemed to bring. Like, even in Godfather, and certainly in Serpico and Dog Day Afternoon, he looks like he hasn't slept in 5 days in Dog Day Afternoon, but apparently is not one to engage. Or
no, but he's method, so he probably was like...
If I was a method actor, I would be like, this character has like a really good drug problem.
Yeah, right.
This character all the time.
His character requires medical grade heroin.
And he relapses constantly.
Yeah.
So.
He might not be able to show up for shooting days.
Right.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've been hearing us chat about Jeff Bezos, about Al Pacino, and what do those things all equal? Radiohead.
Yeah.
When you think Al Pacino, when you think Bezos, when you think the wealth gap in America, you think I'm listening to a podcast about Radiohead. This is Idio Talk, the first episode. Welcome. This is the only Radiohead podcast that exists.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I am one of your two hosts. My name is Walker Glenn.
And I'm Zach Glenn.
And right away, you're like, hold on a second. Am I hearing double?
Yeah. I think that's the feedback we've gotten the most of our similarities is a vocal similarity.
Oh, I hadn't even thought. I meant hearing double with our names, but I wonder if people are we going to sound like the same person?
I knew what you meant. But when at Thanksgiving, the feedback was universally was that I couldn't distinguish between your respective voices.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
That's in all the discussion we've done about starting a podcast together, one thing that has not come up is it going to be an issue that people I wonder if people be just like, this is one guy editing two different tracks, talking
like
to himself.
Most of Joe Rogan's podcast is him and another idiot.
Right. At least these idiots have like a shared history and reference points.
Yeah.
But yeah, you may have noticed we have the same last name. Are we married? No. Would be fine if we were, but that's not our story. We are in fact brothers. We are paternal brothers. We are brothers in Christ. What other? We are Eskimo brothers. We've had sex with the same woman.
Yeah.
That's not true.
No. I mean, I just wasn't gonna share.
Not that we. I mean, it's not true. It hasn't come up.
Yeah. Indy and his father having shared Elsa is one of the most uncomfortable elements of Last Crusade for me.
Oh God.
Yeah, she talks in her sleep.
You don't even want to see your dad as sexual in any way, let alone
a friend told me too. Now this wasn't me. That the porn that is constantly advertised to him is dad and father team, like some familial relation or something, and it's always horrifying to me. Who is that?
Wait, that it's a dad and a son having a threesome with the same woman?
Yeah, and I'm like, who is fantasizing about this?
That's wow,
the grossest thing ever.
Look,
we should cut that for sure, but
I'm not going to kink shame your friend in any way whatsoever.
Yeah.
But it does advertise based on the
okay. I think it's just throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks.
That's true. I mean, it is just like that does seem to be what most pornography has become, is just like what it's like for
You're
some
like,
reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whoa, what the hell?
Yeah. It's kind of just like daring you to be like, look, is this better for you if these two guys are like step cousins?
Right.
I guess so. Clearly, that's the feedback we've been giving these companies.
Yeah.
It's
so
like,
anyways,
now the kinkiest thing you could be into is porn where the premise is no one is related in any way.
Yeah. There's not a 6 degree of separation from this to Radiohead or Jeff Bezos. I could find 3 degrees of separation between Jeff Bezos and Radiohead.
Yeah, thank you for getting us back on topic.
Course.
So Radiohead, that's what we're here to discuss. Over the course of these episodes, we're going to talk about Radiohead's entire career. Going to break it down by some distinct periods, and we're going to break that up by talking about sort of more topical stuff to do with the Radiohead world. And the reason we're doing this is because we're both massive fans of the band. We both play music ourselves, are both big music fans. And this is kind of one of the bands where we didn't feel like everything that can be said has been said. Also, we don't get to hang out as much as we would like to. And this is a good excuse to sit here and talk about shit that, frankly, we would be talking about anyway.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's that people just don't love to talk about Radiohead as much as you or I, because there are Radiohead podcasts. I do believe you're being humorous.
I was, but this is the only one that
this is the only one that matters. No, there's actually a really great podcast that I would love to plug called OK Podcast, and I spoke to the gentleman who runs it. He was a really great guy. Would love to have him on the show at some point. And it is more of like an interview format of people that are somehow close to the band. So I think that base has been covered, but you can tell there are quite a few people that had momentum and then ran out of steam 3 episodes in, and that may be our case as well. But it is one of my favorite pastimes to talk about Radiohead, whether it's at a technical level, whether it's at a cultural level, whatever the case with you. And the only band that I would say even comes close to matching that, and in fact maybe supersede Radiohead, is the Beatles. So they are just like 1 and 2 for me is like my favorite pastime, and to just think about and discuss. And there are other people, not necessarily in the podcast landscape, who seem to share that in mass. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, it's interesting, like, because I wonder if maybe Radiohead, I think that I would speculate that maybe the reason Radiohead are not discussed as a topic as much as other bands would be because they've done a really good job of keeping a kind of tight lid on their personal images. They seem to be very scandal-free, which I like about them. The personality of the people in the band is very much in the background of the music.
Yeah,
and
100%.
I think the other reason maybe people don't discuss them as much is I think Radiohead has a little bit of an unfair reputation of, or maybe this is just me being sensitive of how I feel perceived, but I think people see them as pretentious and that it's kind of like, oh, sure, yeah, Radiohead is sometimes the impression I get, not from, look, I don't associate with these people, but, like people who have not done their own deep dive or found the Radiohead that has kind of grabbed them and made them a big fan seem to dismiss them as that, as kind of like, oh, that's music you listen to like feel smart. That's just an impression I've gotten. Like I say, I might be projecting.
No.
my own
I mean,
insecurities
I feel that in my own head when I'll just be going down a Radiohead rabbit hole. I'm just like, what the fuck are you talking about? But I think with Radiohead, the carpets match the drapes, so to speak, in terms of like the amount of information around them is very. It's a reflection of the band in a way. Like there aren't any Radiohead documentaries, right? And that's within their control, right? There's one from 1997 that you can't buy on Amazon. It's always out of stock, and it's in the OK Computer era, and I've never seen it. There's even their music videos, I think, are interesting because they rarely feature the band, and so I think their image is sort of to focus on the music and to not on the individual, and I think that says a lot about the egos of the band members who are all phenomenal at their music, at their instrument. And I think the pretension comes from exactly what you said, that like they are pretty inaccessible, but that's, I think, what really, really makes them fascinating. It's very in vogue for like self-awareness is so in vogue in comedy and in music. Michael Bolton making fun of himself on SNL, Liam Neeson, Nicolas Cage, and all that. And it is funny, and I like that. And in music, I don't really know how that manifests, but like it's there. The fact that they're inaccessible makes them more fascinating because you don't know what went into the writing of this song. I don't even know how their collaborative process works. And a lot of that's why one of the reasons why I love Paul McCartney is he gives you what you want in terms of the great stories. And you've heard most of them. So it can work, describing, we were doing this and old John said that, or whatever, and it's fun. Radiohead gives you none of that. And I think because the music is so complex and so just can stir so many feelings, not knowing at all what went into that is really fascinating. And they are the two things that come to mind in terms of pretension are not showing up to the Rock and Roll Induction Hall of Fame ceremony, but I still totally dig it.
I like that about them.
I did too. Like, I don't hate it at all. And they had some bullshit excuse, but it was like, it wasn't like, fuck that. It was like, I'm busy. And the time they stood Miley Cyrus up when she was still Miley in 2009, I want to say. So this was like right around Party in the USA. And at the Grammys, she had like arranged their people. I
think this
meeting.
Was Taylor Swift, wasn't it?
No,
it was Miley.
It was Miley.
Okay, I know this. I love this anecdote.
Yeah, and for the record.
Apologies
I
to
think
Taylor Swift and Miley Cyrus. I
think Miley Cyrus is a phenomenal singer.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about her, but I think that she's great. But I get it, and this was long before now. And they just stood her up, and then were asked about it, and they're like, "Yeah, sorry, that was a decision we made." And I felt bad for her because she was like, "These are my musical idols," and at the time, I remember thinking that does not come through in the music you make at all. So those are the two things I could really think of, outside of one or two interviews with Tom York being really awkward and short with the reporter.
Yeah, but it's funny because I think that those same attitudes, if you put them on a different band, it's that's actually just rock star shit or punk. It's punk behavior. And I think that Radiohead don't get treated with those kit gloves where it's oh, well, we're allowing them this because that's part of their shtick because their music is substantial and serious sounding. But it's just why should it follow that they be great at interviews because they're great at making music?
Well, I admire that too, that they're hang out with each other and that's pretty much it. Right. It's really cool, and they seem truly about the music. I know Tom York is in a band with Flea, and or has done projects with them, and Johnny Greenwood obviously scores Paul Thomas Anderson films. So they have their hands in other areas with rubbing elbows with other people.
I think Phil Selway works at a car wash when the band is between tours.
Oh, poor Phil. I would go out on the limb now and say I think he's probably the nicest member. He looks he looks so British, but your friend's dad who's oh, Molly's dad is British. But someone just has a British dad.
And then it's did you know Molly's dad is an insanely good drummer? Yeah. And it's he's in Radiohead.
Or he would have been in Drive Shaft. You all, everybody.
Oh, man. Acting like such stupid people, wearing expensive clothes.
Oh, is that a lyric in it?
That's the follow-up lyric. Acting like such stupid people, wearing expensive clothes.
If Drive Shaft would have been in the same decade as your band Stillwater,
oh, sure.
They would have toured together.
The band from...
They would have headlined a festival together. I don't think they would have collaborated on a tour.
Right. Well, I guess it would probably be sad because Stillwater would be the legacy act, but they're opening for Drive Shaft at that point.
Yeah, but their band names correlate to the 70s, even though
that's true.
Drive Shaft is Bad Company.
Yeah.
Drive Shaft.
Yeah, Drive Shaft is not a very 2000s band name.
No, not at all.
I want to circle back to something you said about Radiohead being inaccessible, and I would maybe quibble slightly with that wording because I think they maybe seem more inaccessible than they are. I would definitely say what's really cool about them is for a band that is as huge as they are, that has as huge of an audience as they do, and has a huge level of mainstream success. They are really, really non-commercial.
Innovative in that way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that they definitely have stuff that's more entry level than others. But I sometimes think that because of their non-commercial kind of marketing, aesthetic, artwork, and instrumentation, sound, they changed their sound a lot over the years, that sometimes it gets lost that they are a really, really good rock and roll band. And I do think that I don't think you have to be some sort of expert about...
Let me clarify. I think as people and their image is somewhat inaccessible, not their music.
Totally. And now I'm not pushing. I know you don't think this. I'm still talking to the person that's oh, Radiohead, that's not for me.
Totally.
And has this idea.
I'll go with Coldplay, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a simple working man.
If I'm going to get really wacky, I'll check out Muse.
Yeah, exactly. It's if you like any of that shit, then you're going to like Radiohead and you're in for a real treat because I think that like Radiohead has music that rewards the casual fan and the obsessive fan, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There's lots of stuff for you to get into if you don't necessarily want to do a deep dive. But if you do want to do a deep dive, it's their music just really rewards repeat listens and really immersing yourself in it.
Yeah, and I think that is strengthened by the fact that they don't follow every 2 years or every 4 years or every 5 years even, because we're at year number 6 now without a Radiohead album. We're going to put out an album. I think it's really shows a lot of trust in their own proficiency as a band that they wait until it's time. And then in 2000 to 2001, they did put out 2 albums. Back to back. So they don't follow a rhythm of like, we need to please the audience to stay relevant, which is like, takes a lot of bravery, I think, as an artist to not, hey, remember us? You know? And they've always kind of been like that. I mean, early on, for sure, the gaps were much shorter. But
is this the longest it's been between albums?
Yeah, because I think Hail to the Thief was 2003 and In Rainbows was 2007.
Oh, 7.
So, and then the next one was 2011, and then 2016 for a Moon-Shaped Pool, and now we're in 2022. And I want to say Moon-Shaped Pool was like before the election.
It was,
but not much, right?
Yeah, it was late spring of 2016.
So summer, or was it?
Yeah, it was in May, I believe it came
okay.
out. So it may have been.
Yeah.
Technically, when does summer start?
June. Yeah.
So it was almost summer.
Almost summer. Okay.
Yeah, and I think too, like to your point about the security that it kind of shows for them to not constantly having to be putting out content. I think that another thing that has made them have the staying power that they have had is that they're not trend chasers.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. Maybe this is another thing that's going to come up. I don't know that I have a ton of objectivity about Radiohead necessarily because neither of us do. And
I'm gonna really try though.
Yeah, I will do my best.
It's going to decline as we go because I love everything more as it goes.
That's what I found too. Is I was actually proud of myself with these first couple albums we're going to talk about. I was like being much more critical.
Yeah, I was too negative.
Then but I was like, basically once we get to OK Computer, am I just gonna every single thing we talk about and be going, this is great.
Well, that's
this
good.
Is great.
Because I'm gonna outlast you then. Because I have plenty of thoughts on that album.
Ooh, that's gonna be exciting.
Yeah.
But so maybe things from their career sound dated or stuck in their time to other people. They don't. But to me, basically from OK Computer on, you can hear them. You can hear things in their sound as it changes that are a response to the time, both musically and culturally. Mm-hmm. But none of that stuff sounds dated. Even if it's utilizing very new musical and studio technologies of the time. And I think that a big part of that is the taste level of the band and the fact that they have worked with the same producer since OK Computer.
Totally.
Because a band that I think they're kind of in the rarefied era of in terms of like legacy would be U2.
Mm-hmm.
But U2 to me,
but they've alternated a lot of right?
It feels like every U2 album over the last 20 years, it's like they're bringing in whoever is the hottest producer of the moment, whoever, and their every U2 album is kind of like, now we're doing this sound that is the big sound of the moment.
Yeah.
And I think that
we used to be pioneers in that way. Like Joshua Tree is like, whoa, 1987 this came out.
Yeah, and I don't think Radiohead has been the most innovative band for the last couple albums the way they were from the OK Computer through Amnesiac period. I think they're a band that is settled they always will be experimental, but they have settled very comfortably into like, we know what we're good at. And I think that's a lot more appealing when you're listening to music made by dudes in their 50s than it is to be like, hey, we need to bring Danger Mouse in to produce this record.
That would be so sad. And it is sad that U2 did it too, but it's way less sad to me than if Radiohead tried to be relevant in a way that reaches people below the age of 30, which I profoundly hope that they are reaching people in that way. That was a very pretentious statement, but
But it doesn't feel like they're chasing young
It would
fans.
be so sad. Yeah, yeah. And, you know, you've seen them live. I don't know what the demographics are when you went.
It's hard to say because it's a music festival, so it's like people and they're headlining a music festival. I mean, I think they have younger fans probably, but I bet most of their fans, we are probably the median age of like hardcore radio fans.
32 to
Radiohead
50. Are they all 50 at this point? I think Johnny Greenwood's the youngest, and so I bet he's probably 50 at this point.
That would track with me, and they all went to high school together, so the age gap between
Really, they were mates. Okay, I didn't know that.
That's where they met, my friend. We'll talk about it.
They met at art school, or some of them did.
Well, it was a private arts high school.
Okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Well, here, bringing it back, kind of anchoring us here. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we both have a lot to say about the band. We've gotten into a lot of our general thoughts about the band right away. But let me ask you, Zach, what is kind of your background with Radiohead? Tell me about your fandom. How long have you been a fan? Mm-hmm. And what's your personal relationship to the band, kind of past and present?
Yes, I will tell you. I was going deep, writing out some notes last night and just kind of thinking, and I'm sure you'll remember all of this, but a few hilarious details came to me. So do you remember when we had that videotape that we were the third owner of that was just like MTV at noon?
Yes!
And it was, I think it had been given to us by
Eric
our cousin.
Fassler gave it to us.
Well, I thought Levi had given it to us from Eric Fassler.
Okay, that would I would buy that.
Yeah, and so it was not TRL.
So our cool older
pre-TRL.
cousin gave it to us.
Yeah, like he will figure prominently, I think, for both of us at different intervals. But he was sort of like the gifter of, or a reluctant gifter of good music.
Yeah.
But very cool guy, a really good taste. And he was done with it. I've had my fun with this videotape. And it's so funny because it's not.
So wait, did you, explain, I think you may have, but maybe just expand a little bit on what this videotape was.
It was MTV, not TRL, not even Top 20. Just someone flicked on the videotape or the TV and was like, I'm going to record what MTV's playing right now.
Isn't also part of it is the band Bush is VJing?
Yeah, and remember how much it bugged us that they shit-talked Weezer?
I held a grudge against Bush forever because...
I don't know if it's from that, but I hate Gavin Rossdale.
Yeah, I mean, they're not a great band.
No.
But they play the Buddy...
jerks, though.
They are. They're really shitty. They play the Buddy Holly video, and that was Weezer with Buddy Holly.
Fuck you.
Yeah.
Go have some Listerine. Or glycerine.
Yeah, wash your mouth. You better wash out that mouth that you...
What was there others?
Shit talk Weezer with.
There's Don't Let the Day In.
That's the same song.
No, but they have that song. And
they also have Breathe In, Breathe Out, Breathe In, Breathe Out.
So we don't like Bush.
This is not a
but
Bush
on this tape was Say It Ain't So, I want to say, or no, Buddy Holly, Basket Case.
Yeah, Green Day.
And I remember Creep was after that. And there was a lot of other songs on there too that are artists that were very in the 90s vein of one-hit wonders. And I remember seeing Creep and recognizing it, like
it's just kind of a straight up performance video, right?
Yeah. It's
red lighting.
It's them playing in front of a 90s audience, but it is shot for like music video. And I remember it, giving me the same impulses to rock out. But even, and I don't feel like I'm embellishing it, even at that age, like it just hitting different parts of my brain and my body of like, oh, I'm responding to this differently and needing you to like corroborate that it was cool. And then Radiohead really just like evaporated out of my consciousness for like a decade. And they re-entered my life at like a very critical moment when I was, like fall after I turned 18, where my mind, my tastes were still like impressionable. And I had kind of put the 2005 and 6 behind me of that era of music and was like, but hadn't found anything. And In Rainbows came out, and it was one of your visits from the Bay where it was just like, check out all this awesome shit, like, a day. And I mean, you had always turned me on to music that you were into or that was good, and other people too. But I mean, you were definitely a conduit for that. And In Rainbows had come out, and there was this like insane fire in your eyes of like, you got to listen to this right now. And you played me Body Snatchers, 15 Step, and those are the only two I can recall. I remember I just started playing the guitar maybe a year before, so like music was hitting in a different way. And hearing Body Snatchers and just being like, whoa, like it just makes me feel puzzled. It, like I know that I liked it, but it was puzzlement at like, this is so good and I can't track with it. And after that, yeah, it was just kind of, I had my iPod Shuffle, had Paranoid Android on there, Street Spirit, and that was all I listened to for an entire summer, was like 3 Radiohead songs. And I'm never one to have a diverse or a huge catalog of music that I'm listening to at any given time, but that was like the apex of just being mono-focused on like 3 great songs. And I know that sounds funny, but those songs in particular are really they're like not super normally crafted songs, especially Paranoid Android. And so that fall I was like, I'm gonna go through the catalog, and I went to the Nevada County Library, and I checked out Pablo Honey, the Bends, and OK Computer, pirated them, and then I just went through their catalog sequentially, and it's the only time I think I've ever done that with a band purposefully. And it was just such a great experience because I had I'd been told and kind of heard through like the zeitgeist that Amnesiac is like a decline, and I loved it. So like I think having kind of reasonable expectations that were tempered made me even enjoy the band more. And it they just really set a tone for the kind of like art I like to consume. And I could talk about that later as far as who I think they sort of resemble and have shaped my taste. But that was sort of my entry into Radiohead.
Fantastic. And would you say that since that point and up to this day, they are your favorite band or one of your favorite bands?
I would.
It's hard to say you have a favorite band, maybe, but I don't know.
No, I think the bands that are currently working that, I mean, they're the only band that if they make something new, I will for sure listen to it in order nonstop for like multiple days on end, and then it'll enter the rotation. There's no other band making music now, which is maybe sad. I'll check out new bands, but like I've totally been ruined by like Spotify, Apple Music culture too, where I can just go in and listen to what I like or whatever. Kind of like how like if the Coen brothers or Tarantino make a movie, I'm like, I will pay a ticket, maybe not right now, but like I will pay a ticket and go to the movies.
Right. I won't wear my mask. I don't. What pandemic? I'll sit. There could be one other person in there, but I'm sitting next to them.
Right. I mean, I've always done that. But yeah. And so they're as far as working, for sure. But I would say the Beatles always will occupy my spot as a favorite band because they're complete. They've done everything they're ever going to do.
I keep meaning to check them out.
They're really good. Okay. Really, really good.
I keep hearing like a lot of buzz about them, and it's on my list.
Yeah. I'll turn you on to some stuff.
Yeah, that and Casablanca are 2 things.
Oh, I saw that for the first time recently.
Any good?
Yeah, I thought it was Casablanca my entire life until the movie.
Is it like queso?
Well, I think Carmela.
Queso
I think Carmela in The Sopranos calls it Casablanca. So I think that just. But yeah, it was great. It's in black and white, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, I can handle that. I think
it was one of those things too where it's so funny. Like I was like, oh, it's from this movie. Like of all the gin joints, and here's looking at you, kid. Radiohead in the same way too. Culturally, I felt like I was just let in on so much. Like, oh, whoa, and I mean, I'm mostly joking, but similar epiphany.
I know how you feel. Yeah.
What about you? Tell me about your entry into the band.
Oh, thank you. Well, I gotta say, interesting, kind of a sliding doors scenario because mine also involves our cousin Levi. I actually did not remember. I very much remember the tape you're talking about. I did not remember that Creep was on that. I was so obsessed with Buddy Holly and Basket Case.
Which both great music videos too.
Yeah, just like that was just like at that age when we had that was probably
It was in Colfax, so I think it would have been. This is why I know it was a hand-me-down through multiple people, because that would have been like 95, 96 for us. So if you think about it, it was probably filmed in like 93 or 94, whenever the Blue Album came out.
Right.
And so, yeah, if we were in Colfax, it would have been like 96, 97. I would have had to have been at least 8. So it was old. And you think about what's on there, and it's cool to think that like Radiohead was playing along with like Green Day and Weezer, who are bands I like, but are not the same at all.
No, I certainly would not put them on the same level artistically. But I was much more into bands like that at that time. The other thing that I remember was on there was a Stone Temple Pilots song that I would always fast forward.
Yeah.
And that the video had like not myself.
Yeah. And that the video had like some like dead animal skeleton with like ants crawling all over it. And stuff.
Yeah, it also had that band of the guy. Remember, he's like at a restaurant and he's drinking like a gin and juice. And just so many one-hit wonders from the 90s.
Oh, and another one-hit wonder that was on there was, I think the band's called Super Drag, and I actually like that.
Popular, I got my own car.
Oh, yeah, that's Not a Surf. Was that video on there?
Yeah, and
that's
it was
a great
very
video.
naughty. Lots of like making out and
Yes.
being handsy.
Yes. I actually listened to that song the other day. And
It's
I was
great.
Like, this is a great song.
Yeah.
And it also had the band Super Drag and that song, Who Sucked Out the
That's the song I'm talking about with the
Oh,
gin
yeah.
and juice.
Okay. Yeah, that
Um,
was a good song.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but like
No, not at
that
all.
video is so great. It's such a great 90s encapsulation because the 3 videos I mentioned I think are fucking awesome.
Yeah.
If for nostalgia or whatever, but definitely, I mean, I would probably say Basket Case and Buddy Holly are better than the Creep video, but whatever. But a lot of like one-hit wonders and Creep, so we'll talk about this later, but Creep like is so anthemic, just like a lot of like even that song Popular, like it's just like something that resonates kind of with you throughout time.
Right.
And it's just funny to me like how many of like anthemic one-hit wonders there were just in that like half hour of MTV.
Totally. And I mean, I think it is worth pointing out too, especially since I just like was saying how from a certain point on Radiohead's music, even though you can contextualize it by its era, sounds very timeless to me.
Mm-hmm.
Very much not the case of, and it's not a slight, but early Radiohead sounds like 90s alternative rock.
Like Blur.
Yeah, it just sounds like Brit rock from the 90s that it absolutely makes sense for it to be on the same playlist as the things we mentioned.
So Levi was...
Yeah, so, I definitely knew the song Creep, but my first, like, Radiohead moment that I remember of them coming into my consciousness was that our cousin Levi played me OK Computer. And
Such a bold move.
I remember just being over at their house, and it's like I was always with the cousins, his younger siblings, who I was closer in age to, but Levi was always super nice and accommodating and stuff. But it's kind of weird that I was like in his room, so I feel like I like must have been.
Are you okay? Like,
Yeah, no, it was nothing nefarious or anything like that. But it's just like I'm kind of like, oh, I
what a nice guy.
Exactly. Like, it's like the only reason I could have been hanging out in Levi's room was definitely not because he was just like, hey, get in here. Like, it had to be like me just being like, oh, I'm going to go bug my...
So you're born in 86. OK Computer is 97. Do you have any recollection if it was the same year that it came out?
That's a good question. I feel like I was older than...
Not enough to find that aspect interesting, right?
I feel like it was probably like more like 98 or 99.
Got it.
I don't know. In my memory, I picture myself being more 12.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know. I think Levi just happened to be listening to it. Mm-hmm. And I think that I listened to most of the album with him. And I remember being like on his bed while he was like doing stuff on his floor and playing this CD. And the thing that really stands out of hearing were Exit Music for a Film and Karma Police. And I really do feel like it was one of those moments where I remember consciously being like, I've never heard anything like this.
Absolutely, me too.
You know, on like a young brain where you're just...
Mine was just 10 years later.
Yeah, but it's like that happens to you and you hear things that you've never, and you just reject them. Like, oh, this doesn't feel familiar to me, and so I'm not interested in it. And this was more like, I can tell this is cool.
Totally.
And I've never heard anything like that.
And that impulse is hard to ignore with them, even if you are someone who likes to pick like music apart or whatever. I understand. I choose my Radiohead songs very carefully when I want to show them to somebody. You know, I understand the impulse because rarely does somebody be like, this is not rarely, but it's more common to me to see somebody puzzled.
Yeah, you know, I don't know if it's because it was my entry point, but I find OK Computer to be the best entry point.
For sure.
Because I also think it's the most it's the album that's more of a bridge than any other. It has they're still a rock band. It's weird, but it's not
pretty
like
in an
if you go from
understandable
the
way.
Bends to Kid A, skipping OK Computer, it's like, is this even the same band?
Totally.
But when you put it OK Computer between it makes sense.
It's very palatable.
Very much so. And so I remember hearing that. I don't know if I connected them to being the same band that did Creep or not. I don't, you know how memory is. It's like I have that memory and then I don't really know how it impacted me beyond that. I don't know if I like became a fan from then or not. I
wanted to ask you that. Yeah, if In Rainbows was the one that got you so pumped on
that
them.
is definitely the one that got me in deep. So I think that at some point, I do think I discovered that album on my own. And
Jason V, maybe you guys were mutually pumped.
No,
I remember
before
visiting you in
that-
the Bay, and we would watch the YouTube videos they did of Scotch Mist for like 3 hours in a row.
Yeah, I mean, so at some point, I think I got into them enough on my own In Rainbows that I liked OK Computer, but this is something I have had to like kind of grapple with in doing this podcast. Something I really don't like about my younger self is like a kind of profound incuriosity about things where I remember for example, I remember hearing OK Computer and it blowing my mind, but then just going and listening to Limp Bizkit for the next 5 years. Like I, for some reason, didn't internalize that enough to be like, maybe I should like explore like this cool music.
Right. I can relate.
Yeah, so it's kind of like
I watched Batman every day for like a year.
1989
and
Batman.
I loved movies and recognized things I liked about it, but was satisfied to stop there.
Yeah, it's weird because I think about that too with like we grew up listening to the Beatles a lot, and I'm surprised that didn't imbue me with like better taste from a younger age because it really was not until adulthood that I started to see those things that I liked as an entry point to a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, you're being way too hard on yourself because by the time you were 18, you were checking out Figure 8 by Elliott Smith. You had kind of seemed that you had departed maybe like more of the punk rock, or even the punk rock that you were checking out. And I'm not going to turn this into too much of a compliment fest, but your adventurousness, your willingness to be adventurous was far surpassed mine when I was at 18. And not saying like I didn't have my own musical taste, but it was definitely like, hey, check this out. Check out Figure 8. And just finding it on your own. So I think that you should be a little easier on yourself.
Well, fair enough. I'll take that. And you know, I like definitely will allow my younger self that I just had to go through a few years where it's like I was a Christian kid living in a small town. Culture was not something that felt super accessible to me. And what made me feel good was to listen to music that my parents hated that had a ton of swearing. So between Levi showing me that and eventually having a more broad appreciation for good music, got bogged down for a lot of years in kind of the new metal stuff that was popular. at that time. And I know that by the time In Rainbows came out in 2007, I was enough of a fan of Radiohead that it was on my radar that I want to check out this new album that they put out.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll talk more about it when we get to this era of that. But I also was aware of that they had ditched their record label and had released it independently.
Yeah, there was a lot of like cultural hype around it because they were really innovative in that way. And then like
they did a pay what you want.
Followed to do the same thing several years later.
What did? I'm
comedy?
Sorry.
Like,
yeah, sure.
Louis C.K. and Jim Gaffigan did the same thing with their album release like 5 years later.
Yeah, so it had a lot of buzz around it being like they've released this without a major label and are doing a pay what you want model, which, if I'm not mistaken, I think netted them more money in album sales than anything they've done.
So much for that album, and it was so. I know this to be true that it was such a bold move because you think about 2007. I was still buying CDs, not regularly, like I had LimeWire or whatever, but it was going away. But I think 2009, it was like, what are you doing?
Right.
But there was so much, how will this band make money? What the fuck is wrong with them? And they made so much money from it. It was so innovative and bold and smart.
Yeah. Yeah, and they, again, like it's paid off for Radiohead time and time again to do not what is the most commercial thing, but what they think is the best thing for their career. But in any case, In Rainbows was, for me, similarly the point where it went from Radiohead are a band that I am aware of and like some of their stuff. Mostly I'm familiar with OK Computer, to these are my guys. And I'm now obsessed with everything. Like, I loved In Rainbows so much that it was now...
have to go down the rabbit hole.
Exactly. It was now... What is the word I'm searching for? Where it's something is... not paramount, but it is now incumbent upon me to listen to everything these guys have ever done. And that period was when I was able to, kind of get my head around Kid A and Amnesiac. And I will say, you very sweetly crediting me with exposing you to that. I would say big broadeners of my horizons musically would be my friends Jason Vitlasil,
for sure,
and my friend Jesse Rimler.
Yeah,
and Jesse Rimler was in a band who practiced at the house that I lived at the time, and Jesse, in particular,
he had seen them as a younger person and stuff, right? Like
and also just like those pillars of kind of the Beatles, Elliott Smith. And a little bit of Radiohead. That was kind of like
magic.
That and Jesse was really the guy who is also a Beatles obsessive, but was like, oh, have you heard the Zombies? Oh, have you heard the Kinks?
I loved your Zombies phase.
Yeah, or like, it's like, have you heard the Velvet Underground? Like, I had never listened to the Velvet Underground. All this stuff and so I would say 2007, 2008, when I'm like, ages like 19 through 21 are when my musical taste developed into basically everything that I was listening to at that time is now still my favorite stuff that I go back to the most. And where I'm at with Radiohead now is I would definitely call them my favorite band that's working today. And
let me ask you, Walker, is Radiohead your favorite band?
I would say that they are my favorite band. Okay. Thank you. Because when I think of like what do I consider to be my favorite musical artists, it basically is Radiohead, Elliott Smith, and the Beatles, I would say. And the reason is not because that music is quantifiably better than other music that I really enjoy. It's what are the things that I listen to no matter what is going on in my life consistently.
Yeah.
And I after 15 years of listening to the same stuff by these artists, I'm never sick of it. And Radiohead has that for me where every time I decide to listen to Kid A or OK Computer in their entirety, it'll be kind of exciting. Like, oh, wow, it always feels like I haven't listened to it in a while, even though that's almost never the case.
Yeah, you can pick out new things that you wouldn't have heard before, and that's like any great piece of art, like a really, really great movie, or a movie that now you can kind of deconstruct, like Star Wars. But you have a son, and I'm sure the magic of watching it at 35 and finding new things is not the same as but there's still new things to discover. And I think with Radiohead in particular, there's that I get that feeling on stuff I think I don't like, even though I've heard it a million times. I will go back to it and go, oh no, you know what, this hits me differently. And they've been my favorite band for, I would say, 12 years, since like 2009. And I think that's enough time to like want to devote time and discussion and energy and resources to putting together a podcast for it, because I go through a lot of phases, like artistically and with tastes and all that, and they'll come and go for about 6 months to a year. And it doesn't mean that I'll drop those things entirely, but I'm not emblazed with the same amount of passion as I previously had. But I think 12 years is long enough to go out on the limb and say they will be with me forever.
Totally, it's not a phase.
It's not a phase, no.
So I think that we have probably successfully indicated to the audience that we are fans of Radiohead. Mm-hmm. So in case you were like Radiohead curious and you're like, am I listening to a podcast with guys who even love Radiohead? Mm-hmm. Rest assured. And so, if you don't like hearing people fan out about stuff, this probably won't be the podcast for you, because we're gonna be as critical as we can be, but we're definitely going to be in kind of a love fest for this band as we talk about.
But I am very much looking forward to, I think when you establish that you're on footing of somebody who, because Radiohead fans can be very, not club-like, but it is sort of a very unique group of people and very passionate. But I think once you establish that, hey, I understand their music to some degree and I am devoted to the band, that gets you to a place where you can be critical, and not to a place where I could do that better, but where you can poke fun a little bit, because there are certainly things even up to now that I think are definitely worthy of critique and are a little bit funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, do you think it's a good place to kind of get into discussing the early stages of the band's career?
PH?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
And okay, so just to get the most basic of information out of the way, Radiohead are a band who formed in a private art school,
Oxfordshire.
They lived in Abingdon. It's Abingdon, which I feel like the British would be like Abingdon. Yeah. So it's a small town, about 30,000 people outside of Oxfordshire. And they were going to a private school for boys, a school with a focus on the arts. So these guys basically met in high school at art school, which I think is, anyone who's listened to Radiohead, that's like maybe the least surprising thing you could hear about them, is that they all went to art school in England.
The United Kingdom encourages people to be artistic, and the results seem to be pretty good. John and Paul met at art school. Jimmy Page went to art school.
There you go. It's almost like if people have a chance to flourish, they can do
people
good
are
things
like,
with
why
their
are there
lives.
so many funny, great actors from Canada?
It's like, because they all have health care.
No, and they encourage the arts.
Right. Right.
Anyway, please continue.
No, I love, that's just the kind of tangent that we love here on Idiot Talk.
Yeah.
So members of the band are Tom York, principal songwriter of the band, guitarist, later also pianist. Johnny and Colin Greenwood, brothers.
Love that there's brothers in the band.
I do too.
Love that. I love when a band can successfully pull off brothers. Van Halen included. I'll go ahead and throw them in.
I was gonna say I can't think of a second example of a harmonious relationship of brothers in bands, but Van Halen, they hung in there.
Yeah, there might be one more. It'll come to me.
Yeah, but in general, I feel like you have a lot of examples of that being a real shit show.
Absolutely.
Obviously.
Don't go into business or start a band with family.
No, or a podcast with your brother. That's a horrible idea. But, obviously Oasis, those brothers hate each other. The Kinks, those brothers hated each other.
Fleetwood Mac, Lindsey Buckingham, and Stevie Nicks. They're mortal enemies.
It's probably worse to be in a band with your on-again, off-again lover than your brother, I would
fuck
say.
That. It's awful.
But in any case, Johnny Greenwood is basically the wizard of the band. In their early years, he's the lead guitarist. And as Radiohead goes deeper into their career, everybody is somewhat versatile in terms of what they're playing. I would say the most static in their positions are probably Tom and Phil, their drummer. But Johnny Greenwood is very much the kind of like super musician of the band, I would say.
Really, really drives the digital innovation in the early aughts, along with Tom York for sure.
But he's also in the composition. I would
Absolutely,
say.
yeah. He's a stellar composer and plays the odes marionette as well, along with every other instrument. But that's
including also isn't the like theremin sounding stringed instrument he's playing in National Anthem something that he invented?
He really innovated it, though. If you watch
is that the odes marionette or
no, the theremin he plays as well. There's footage in Scotch Mist, which is them playing in rainbows during Jigsaw and Nude, and the way he's using it almost looks like a lap steel. That's like a Johnny Greenwood specific innovation.
Okay,
it's very, very cool.
So that he's the kind of the crazy genius of the band. Colin Greenwood, his brother, I guess he's also fairly static in his positioning. All of them do blips and bloops, but he's the bassist.
Also a genius.
Oh, first of all, I'm emphasizing Johnny, but there's not a wasted position in radio. Zach's making a face, and I know who he's making it about.
But I love him though.
But
it hurts me to even.
On that note, we'll mention there's also Ed O'Brien, who I would say, if we're suspicious of Ed O'Brien, it would be because there are Radiohead songs where he does seem to be standing about, and he's also, I would say, very much probably the only classically handsome member of the band.
Some of them have gotten better with time.
Yeah, I'm not knocking anybody's looks, but he's the only one who's handsome in a traditional
in
way.
an Affleckian way.
He looks kind of like Ben Affleck.
He's
and so,
crazy tall like Ben Affleck. He's 6'5".
Oh, shit,
Tom
I didn't
York's
know that.
5'4".
Is that true? I didn't know Tom York was that little, and I didn't know Ed O'Brien was that big.
Yeah, he's really big. I do want to give Ed O'Brien some quick cred here for his versatility.
He also does the harmonies.
He's an outstanding vocalist. I don't know how he would sound on lead vocals, but he nails his harmonies live, which is always the mark of a great band.
I think his voice is pretty similar to Tom's because maybe not in
falsetto.
No, but I'm thinking of a word where you have a lot of versatility. Maybe he's not as versatile as a singer as Tom, but a lot of times I've thought the harmonies that I thought were Tom double tracking are actually Ed. So I do think they have a very similar kind of character to their voice. But yeah, we will probably lovingly tease Ed O'Brien a little bit because sometimes it does feel like he's a little tacked on to the song.
Yeah, and henceforth, if you hear me refer to the handsome man, that's Ed O'Brien.
That's Ed O'Brien. He's the handsome man. And then the bald man back there on the skins, we've got Phil Selway.
Yeah.
And this is the lineup from the formation of the band up to present day.
Which is incredible.
Incredible. I think also really speaks to just kind of the maturity and lack of drama seemingly in Radiohead. These guys have managed to enjoy making music together for
they're so collaborative
since 1985
and so harmonious, but they definitely occupy pods within the band. And you could say that with any band, the drummer is but Colin and Phil, the bass player and the drummer, seem so locked in on live performances, and that's natural. The bass and the drums drive the percussion. And then Johnny Greenwood is on his own little island, and then Ed and Tom seem very connected, and it is it's so amazing to watch that they're a unified force, but they just kind of live in their own little pods during grooving time.
That's a good observation. So they formed in 1985 in high school. They signed to EMI in 1991. I forgot. Important thing here. They formed.
What day did they form on?
They form as a band called On a Friday, and not a great name. And listeners, you may have noticed that this podcast downloaded into your app on a Friday. That's when we drop this because we do like to honor Radiohead's humble origins.
Great.
That is like the most like
Let's
dog
entice
shit.
no viewers through searching and just call it On a Friday. No one will ever find us.
And not do any sort of subtitle that has anything to do with Radiohead. Just On a Friday, two brothers. The most inaccessible podcast of all time. And then they listen to it and they're like, what is this? Is two siblings talking about a VHS tape they had in 1995.
Have you seen Tom York from there's one footage there's one shot, of him playing the guitar when they are on a Friday, and his hair that man has a great head of hair that is nothing like my own, but when it's long, he looks crazy. It is so funny. It's like, how 80s sort of style was to like have it like really spiked up here, but then long down to your shoulders.
Sure.
His hair seemed to naturally do that when it was long, and it is hilarious.
And his hair has started to recede a little bit in recent years, but in a way that I think like
Love the
looks
samurai
cool.
he's rocking.
Yeah. He's pulling off a top knot in a way that somehow isn't douchey.
Yeah. Just gets better with age.
So they form as On a Friday because that's the day that they practiced, and
I did not know
they're
that.
just a competent high school rock band. In 1991, they signed to EMI. EMI asked them to change their name. Good note. And they changed their name to Radiohead, which they got from a Talking Head song called Radiohead. There's a space between the words radio and head. I like to think, though, that maybe that it was like one of them loved to listen to the radio a lot, and it was like
That's what I imagine the origin to be.
Yeah,
because I
just
didn't
like-
hear about the Talking Heads until much later.
Phil, you're a bit of a Radiohead, aren't you? Always listening.
That's what we'll call it.
Yeah, but Tom, listen to yourself. That's the bloody name, mate. That was Johnny saying that. Hold on now. That's bloody brilliant.
I like that version better.
So they changed their name to Radiohead. They record their first EP is called the Manic Hedgehog EP, which contains some early versions of songs that would end up
Man,
on
I
there.
hate the naming conventions for everything early they did.
That's funny. I mean, it's not a great name. You can definitely like tell.
The 90s was so powerful in the 90s.
And just that they're young. I mean,
Yeah.
you can tell that they're like trying to be like kind of funny with this early stuff. And I don't think that Radiohead are like a pretty serious band. And I would say that there's less humor to their music than other bands that I like. But I just think that judging by their early work, that humor is maybe not their strong suit.
No, and I think that I think it's really I think Tom York is probably the oldest, or I think Colin might be, but pardon me, I'm sorry. But I think it's really good that he was 25 and not 22 when they got to make their album, because there's a really big difference for most people in your maturity level and your confidence in like what you think is good to put out into the world.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And also, I like the name Manic Hedgehog a lot better than I like the name Pablo Honey for an album. Just for what
it was
it's
out.
worth.
Oh yeah, because it was their EP. I do too, actually. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's
I take
not
that back.
great, but it's,
It's too punk rock for Radiohead is the problem.
yeah, and that's, I think that as we're about to get into Pablo Honey, but I think that that's what it struggles with the most is they're just not their own thing yet. And so Pablo Honey, and I think even certain parts of the Bends,
for sure,
much more successfully, but are a band still doing their best imitation of their influences, which let's talk about. So their early influences that they cite are REM. They're super into REM, and super into the Pixies, which I think you really, really hear on the Bends.
Big time, yeah.
And so they get signed. They're not much of anything when they get signed. They're not they're not a touring outfit or anything like that. They're a local band, and they get signed, change their name to Radiohead, and right away they're recording Pablo Honey, their debut album. Talking of the name, do you know what the name's from? The name, I didn't know this until like 2 years ago. I was a couple of years ago. I was listening. I don't know why
doing this in 2019, but I was listening to a bunch of the Jerky Boys, and I think because
what that is either.
Oh, you don't? No. So the Jerky Boys were a very popular comedy group that did prank calls in the 90s.
Oh, okay.
And they did tons of CDs. And
I do know them, yeah.
And prank calls are a lost art. I think when they're done right, they're really funny. I think the Jerky Boys are really funny, but it's a Jerky Boys sketch is Pablo Honey, and it's like one of them doing an old lady voice talking to the person on the other line as if they're her son Pablo, and
I've heard this.
Pablo,
yeah, this was like early like Joe cartoon era when I heard it on the online.
Yes. Yeah. So I mean, I think that kind of shows you where we're at in terms of like their development as people that they're naming there. Which whatever, they're young guys and they're a new band,
totally,
and it's fine. I don't fault them, but it's so unrecognizable to what Radiohead is.
The album art makes sense a little bit with those first two albums, and it is like thrown together and not super sophisticated, but it's not cringe inducing for me.
No, I don't hate that it's the kind of like a 90s computer generated
imaging. It's like
Nirvana
and like Beck and like a lot of it's an amalgamation of things, right? Like and I'm not saying Nirvana has invented babies, but they're definitely the most famous album to feature a baby on it.
Yeah,
you can, like you were saying, you can just really feel the influence of everything.
Yeah. So let's talk about Pablo Honey a little bit. So that's their first album. Like I said, Radiohead at this point, they're like completely green. They are totally new to the studio. The record label hooks them up with producers Paul Kolderie and Sean Slade, who had produced the Pixies and Dinosaur Jr. And both the quotes from those guys were kind of like that they did not enjoy working with the band and that this was not a fun album to make.
Interesting.
Yeah, they were just, I mean,
they needed Sweet Sweet Nigel.
Yeah, it just was kind of like one of the quotes that I read was just like, we were dealing with guys who had no idea what they were doing but had 20 years of ideas and wanting everything to be like the Beatles, and that they were like already I think you kind of had shades of like Radiohead's rigidity in control of their like sound and image. Is they like were super emphatic about there being like no reverb and not like wanting all these effects and stuff.
So they did not get their way then.
I think ultimately it maybe was produced like more of a product of its time than maybe they wanted.
Sure.
I don't know that, but yeah, like it sounds like it sounds like one of those like big industrially recorded.
But one of the things that's so fun about it, I know we'll hit this when we talk about the tracks, is that you can hear shades of what's to come.
That's interesting that you say that. I don't think that. On
two songs in particular.
What we can talk about that.
Keep going. We'll go through the tracks in a minute. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's not a ton more background to say. They recorded this album in like under 3 weeks.
Oh wow!
There's not a lot of B-sides from it. Basically, everything they had is on the album, with the exception of a few songs. There's one B-side I'd like to maybe play a little bit of. The song that you know from it is "Creep." And you, I mean the royal you, if you know.
But there is a song named You on it.
The opening track is called You, which I think is one of the better songs on the album.
I concur. It's my second favorite.
Okay, I would agree with that. But no, I don't know if there's a ton more to say about background, so I think we can talk about our general thoughts, and then there's a couple moments on the album I'd like to go over.
Yeah, I think, it's been 12 years since I have listened to Pablo Honey front to back, cover to cover. And I remember listening to it and even at that time having the discernment to go, okay, yeah, I'm done with that. Even though I was so virginal and fertile for good music. But I do really enjoy the song You. It's not even a Radiohead song to me.
Play a little bit of You while we're talking.
It's so U2 reminiscent.
It's
but
very
it's
U2.
I mean the
he is
so
straight
Bono.
up aping Bono there.
Yeah. Did you want to play it or?
Yeah, it is playing, and so if you want to put on your headphones, it's playing in the background while we're talking. But yeah, please.
So yeah, I mean, the way he belts it is then this whole album is Bono influenced. I think. I think what hits me kind of in the background is you can hear some aggressive bends that feel like Radiohead would never do this now, of just like empty singing with nothing else happening with the instrumentation.
Right.
There'd be a piano at minimum.
There's a lot of the like loud, quiet, loud thing that was
this
very
down,
popular.
up, down, up
Yeah.
is so 90s. And
But this riff that Greenwood is doing is pretty cool.
very cool. I like this. It sounds like a band that has a lot of talent and ideas stored up, and this album is really short on that.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that really on this album, Greenwood sounds kind of miles ahead of where the rest of the band is at compositionally.
Yeah. There's... I like that part so much.
Yeah. I do want it to get to the part we were talking about where he does the belts out the
it's
OO.
New Year's Day combined with War, combined with every song on Joshua Tree.
Turn it up a little bit. Let it play for a moment because it's coming up, right?
That reminded me.
Yeah, this is cool. I like
this, yeah.
Yeah. So that moment right there, it's cool, but it's not him.
And Bono
it's
is
him
a great
imitating
singer,
Bono.
but yeah, like even Tom York's legato, just to be kind of technical, is one of my favorite things that he used to do. And there's none of that
Now
there.
I know what that is, but pretend I don't. I don't know what that is. What's a legato?
Legato is like a singing technique where when you're belting, and now I'm nervous because I'm going to get it wrong, but when you're sustaining a note, that point at which your voice crests and it sounds like you can hear the vocal cords almost shaking in a little bit. So like in a Radiohead song, an example where he uses legato in Paranoid Android.
Okay.
The way he sustains that, and apologies if that was a butchering, but Tom York's legato is incredible, and the way he belts that is just like a Bono impression, and Bono is a fantastic singer, but that's not what he does vocally.
Yes, and this is a general note I have about the first two albums. Is I hadn't really, so I also had not. I have. Radiohead is one of the only bands who I have their whole studio discography on vinyl, including the couple records that I'm not as crazy about.
His pinky is up.
Yeah. It's just a lot warmer.
Richer.
Yeah. Oh, listen to those pops and cracks. That's what I love.
Which is the best part about it.
Yeah. And just holding a record, and it's all the ritual bullshit. But Pablo Honey, I removed the cellophane for this podcast. I had that record and I never listened to it because it's like, if I want to listen to Creep, I'm just going to listen to Creep on my phone.
Yeah.
And so I've listened to it all the way through a few times in the last few days. One note I have, and I'm not here to bash on this album. It's their first album. But one note that I have is that Tom York's vocals, to me, on the first two albums, actually, it sounds to me like he's like still kind of trying to be a traditional rock singer.
Yeah, I don't think he had found his voice by the bends, but it hits, and I know we're not there yet, but I think that's a really good call.
Yeah, he's still doing a little, like he's snarling more, and he is doing these things that I feel like are kind of trying to disguise the weirdness of his voice. And he does have a very beautiful voice, but it's distinct.
Like a
it's not
six-octave
traditional.
range, and it feels like he's holding it back. And he has said in interviews too, he didn't like how pretty his voice was up through OK Computer. And he
that
says
makes
it in a more
sense because
humble
I feel
way.
like he's kind of trying to disguise
disguise
the nasal and higher quality of his voice that I think gives it a lot of its distinction and personality. But he's trying to be a little like snottier on these first couple records, and I don't love it as much as when he embraces what his voice is.
I'm so glad you said that because there are 2 moments, probably 5, but on the bends where they're the opposite of that than Pablo Honey, where it's like, oh wow, he's putting it on Front Street, and this guy can really, really sing, which is totally apparent even just from Creep. But I totally think that's a brilliant call. I'd not developed or become comfortable as a singer just yet.
So the other thing I would say, and if there's more you want to say, this is not an album we're going to break through track by track. We're not necessarily going to do that with any albums, but I have a feeling that once we get to our favorites, we'll have so much that we want to say that we more or less will be talking about every song.
Yeah.
On this one, really, there are not a lot of standout moments. I have my highlight and low light from this album. I don't know if you do, but I think the thing that we have to talk about is Creep. So Creep, which I'm going to also put on. Creep is obviously the song that lots of people, if they know...
it just brings so many good feelings.
Yeah, and I think for lots of people... this still may be the only Radiohead song they know.
Sadly, no, because I think most people think this is the only song they know, and they're one of those bands. They go, oh, this is Radiohead? That happened to me when I, quote-unquote, discovered them, and it was only about 2 songs. God, this is so good. I love the picking pattern.
Yeah, this is a great song, and so this was not what the record label wanted to be the single, but the producers and the band fought for this to be the single, and it's a big fat hit. Weirdly, it comes out and it doesn't do anything, but it becomes a big hit in Israel, and then migrates back to the UK and to the USA. Now, Patrice O'Neill, the late great comedian, has a very funny bit I've seen him do where he is on a radio show and they're playing this song and he's talking about how this song moves white people more than any song that exists. And he's kind of likening it to white people must love this song because they're like dealing with their white guilt because of slavery. And he's saying that like that's why every white person feels like a creep. And when it does the part of dun he keeps going, I don't know what that noise is, but that moves white people. And I kind of have to wonder if maybe this song first caught on in Israel for similar reasons because of the social and political situation over there. Maybe people are just like dealing with their guilt about the apartheid state that they live in through listening to Creep. I don't know. I can't speak to it directly, but...
I don't know. I mean, I think that it's I've said the word anthemic more times than I like, but it's so nice. I mean, it's post-Nirvana or post-Nirvana's peak. And I think I don't have to talk about what was happening in the early 90s. Everyone knows. It was such a rejection of, 80s glam, and I think anyone who is into rock, similar to this, like, was... been bullied in high school or what. I'm not saying everyone was, but that was sort of the tone.
Right.
And then this part, oh my gosh, this is like what Johnny Greenwood is doing on guitar right here. It's very simple. It's not as hard as it sounds, but I mean, this has been his soloing style, or was, up through OK Computer.
Yeah, this
and it just gets more and more complex. And then it's this belt right here is still in the Bono vein, but you can hear this guy can really, really sing.
This is, to me, the only song on this album that sounds like Radiohead.
Yeah, because the 4 chord going to a C minor, or whatever key you're playing it in, but let's say you're playing it, it would be G, B7, C, C minor. That is pivoting your 4 chord to the minor is... not the oldest trick in the book, but it's something that in classical music is like, or in movie scores, you don't even know that you're hearing it. But in pop music, it's very much something the Beatles and Queen popularized. Definitively the Beatles. And Elliott Smith, we were mentioning, he does that a lot. But Radiohead really, really do that and did that a lot. And I mean, may have lost people who don't care about that, but it's what makes Radiohead sound go, oh, different, whether you play an instrument or not.
Sure.
And I that's one of the reasons why I love it.
have nothing to add to that except that I think I agree with you. It has like a signature flourish that people feel whether they're conscious of it or not.
Oh, totally.
And so that song is a sleeper hit, and that now Radiohead are a big deal.
Oh, that was the other thing that I wanted to say surprised me that that it wasn't a hit right away is like think about every song off Nevermind, but then like Beck's Loser, like why were people gravitating towards anthems about I'm a reject?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's like that like slacker mythos of the 90s.
Very
It's very like Clerks, move over boomers, Gen X is here.
Yeah, and we have tears in our jeans.
Yeah, exactly.
And shitty haircuts.
Now, actually,
I do like one other song.
I was going to say let's take a pee break.
Okay.
And then pick back up. But let's hold it on the pee break if you have more to say about Creep.
No, I just love that in the music video. I think Johnny Greenwood is wearing his signature arm brace that he wore through OK Computer. Do you know about this?
No.
So we're going to have to, I think when we get to the bends, we'll have to watch some live footage of Street Spirit. But Johnny Greenwood would wear what basically looks like somebody who has really bad carpal tunnel who's scanning your groceries wears. But it's custom because he would bang his arm on his guitar from rocking the fuck out too hard such that the doctors were like, you will break your wrist. So you need to wear some sort of guard, which is the most metal thing ever.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was not for show.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's so dope.
That's like so on Radiohead. I love it.
Dude, that guy fucking rocks his body when he plays and always looks at the floor.
He does, and he has the like low slung guitar of the 90s too. Yeah. Okay, we're going to take a quick pee break and then we'll be back to discuss more of Pablo Honey.
Yeah. So where were we? We were on Creep.
Yeah. Now you prefer the radio edit of this song?
I prefer the Radiohead edit. Radio.
Did I say that too?
No, you got it right. The radio edit because
what the Radiohead it?
Oh, nice. Ooh, that's sort of subreddit thread of Radiohead. It's so fucking special is great, but and it could be just that I heard the radio edit, but yeah, I don't mind when artists curse in their music at all. I'm not a prude, but to have each lead into the chorus was so fucking special is a little immature.
It's a very young man move, but for me it works in this particular song.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say but you know what's interesting though is when Tom York uses the word fuck throughout their career, it's always kind of in like a little bit of a throwaway way where
is there another song where they use a fuck?
Well, he uses fucking as an adjective. Like he used in Talk Show Host, the B-side from the Bends.
Great song.
You Want Me.
Romeo plus Juliet.
Fucking will come and find me.
Yeah. It doesn't sound like fucking is more how it goes.
Right. But you really don't need it there.
Yeah.
But I like it. But also, and in Rainbow's B-side, Up on the Ladder, Up on the Ladder, we're all the fucking same.
And I know Hail to the Thief has a parental advisory sticker on it.
Wow, does he say that?
There is
F-bomb on that?
Yeah, and I can't remember what song is it Wolf at the Door? There's a fuck in it. Yeah, there's several curse words in that song, and then I think some of the lesser known songs too, like Myxomatosis, I think has a F-bomb, but it works in those songs, especially in Wolf at the Door.
Yeah, and also in the Tom York solo song Black Swan, the chorus is "This is fucked up," which that's my favorite.
Absolutely, it totally works there. It's just in Creep, it's a little immature.
Yeah, okay, a little overt. I'll buy it, and I think that. Well, actually, I'm going to save. We'll talk about our general thoughts, but you said you have another. So I'll just say we're going to talk about our highlights and lowlights of each album. I will be struggling to find lowlights as things go on, but I think it's a fun exercise. I will just say, very obvious, but my highlight, we've covered both of them. They're probably the belting out that "oh" in the opening song, You, and his falsetto in Creep. are kind of my highlights of this album. Now you said you like something else, and I'd like to play it.
Yeah,
What's
but
your
what's so
other
sad
highlight?
is I can't even remember the title of the track, but it has an acoustic. It's largely an acoustic song, and I think it's before anyone can play guitar.
Thinking About You?
Yeah, let's go ahead and cue that one up.
Okay, this is Thinking About You by the band
Yep,
Radiohead. Is this the all the things you got? This is a good song.
Yeah, it's great, and I think this almost sounds like it could be a Green Day song, like in the Nimrod era. It's more complex than Billy Joe Armstrong would play rhythmically, because if you listen to it, boom chicka boom chicka, it's not overly complex, but there's something to it. And I like that he sings a little bit, not off key, but in a Tom Yorkie way on the chorus. It's just a fun song.
You know what? I was humming this to myself earlier today, and I think I kind of associated it more with the Bends because it is a more mature song than the rest of this album. I think in the chorus he's doing a Bono impression again, but
For sure.
And the lyrics are also very Bono.
Yeah, I think we should
Here
talk
we go.
about.
Here's this chorus.
Yep, very Bono.
This is a nice song. This is a nice song.
This
I like this.
Pixies as well. This is all the things you mentioned to the T. But even the chords they're doing, I don't know how to play this song, but it sounds like church chords, like open chords that were very, I mean, even now they're prevalent, but like music has endured for centuries. But, there's definitely eras of rock and roll, and I think this one falls squarely into it. And, just listen to it. Oh, man.
This is good.
It is good. It is so U2 like. And like it's an era of U2 I can't place. It's like Rattle and Hum and Achtung Baby a little bit because it's not adventurous enough to align with any other great U2 albums.
No, but it sounds like that Joshua Tree, Rattle and Hum kind of Americana era of U2. Now, does Radiohead claim U2 as an influence?
No, and I mean I can't wait till we get to whether we devote an episode or whatever to their to my hunch on what their influences are, because that's another way that they are maybe inaccessible might be the wrong word, but Radiohead claim the Talking Heads. There's a jazz album from I can't believe I'm forgetting. It's not like Louis Armstrong, but there's a jazz artist that Tom York claims is very influential.
Miles Davis.
Thank you.
That would be amazing if like Tom York's just like
doesn't Louis Armstrong?
Yeah,
like a really
it's just like,
racist.
he just sits around listening to What a Wonderful World all the time, and
I'm a creep.
somehow out of that he like gets Kid A.
Well, jazz figures prominently into, but that's a genre of music or a style. But I think that there are some bands that are very famous that are in the zeitgeist that straight up influence Radiohead on one album in particular. And they don't have to tell us that, but I do think it's fun to speculate.
Yeah.
About and Pink Floyd would be one as well, where I find Radiohead to be very much in the Pink Floyd spectrum in ways, and totally different as well. And they don't really sound like the Beatles.
Maybe when they named their album In Rainbows, they meant the rainbow that's on the cover of Dark Side of the Moon.
Totally, yeah.
Like, that's the rainbow we're talking about, mate. Is that one rainbow? In Rainbows and Prisms was the original title, but it was too on the nose.
I'm really glad
that
they edited it. Yeah.
I think the Talking Heads influence is very direct, especially
in the writing,
in the lyrics.
Yeah.
Alienation, I think, are themes that have probably been explored in music for a long time, but I don't think that they were as much of a theme in rock and roll. And David Byrne's lyrics do the same thing that Tom York's do, where he takes a common experience or phrase,
mundane life.
Yeah, exactly. And imbues it with a great deal of anxiety or sadness or anger.
Or creep is great because we've all felt like or most people have felt like a reject, whether you're popular or isolated. But it's very on the nose. But I think a feeling of displacement and isolation. It is really a feeling with Radiohead because so often I think it's very hard to discern the words in certain Radiohead songs, but that's the beauty of music. And not to get too hippy dippy, but it is amazing how it can inspire that feeling of loneliness and displacement. And then you read the lyrics and they are that, but they're very short. I mean, we haven't talked about the lyrics too much, but I think by the next album, he's really coming into his own as a songwriter and as a poet. I mean, I think that's really what songs are, is stanza poetry.
Absolutely.
Definitely in their case.
I mean, I would say the lyrics on this album are all just not great. And, I don't have like a ton to pick apart about them. They sound like the lyrics that a young man wrote. And it's just this early Radiohead stuff it's interesting because I think that like Radiohead are so cool later that they make it look easy.
Immediately later.
Yeah, right. Very soon after this. But the Benz has moments of this for me too, where this seems much more concerned with seeming cool to me than Radiohead do later. And on that note, is it okay if I get into my low light of this album?
Yeah, but my last thing is that is complimentary is I like on the intro of Anyone Can Play Guitar, I get shades of Body Snatchers. You know, the end of Body Snatchers when everyone's just going fucking crazy and it's hard to kind of tell. I think it's so cool that you can recognize just little things. The back half of it I don't really enjoy, and I can't wait to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree. To me, the like standout moments of this album are it's front loaded, and then it really just kind of blows
so Nirvana.
Together.
He likes to shoot his gun.
Oh, very true. So we're listening to Anyone Can Play Guitar. Now, before I re-listened to this album, I remembered this song as like, oh, there's another song on this album I like besides Creep.
I like that.
And it's Anyone Can Play Guitar. And then I was listening to it and I'm like, I think this song sucks. Like, I think this song sucks really bad. And there's a specific moment in it that is my low light. And
I hate this. I hate the pickup speed.
I found I'm not a fan of that in general. I don't like when a song goes into double time for the chorus.
Agreed.
Yeah, I find it disconcerting and I don't like it.
Yeah.
But so this is Anyone Can Play Guitar. I believe this is a single from the album.
It's the only other single, yeah.
It's catchy, but it's not great. Zach's making a lot of like cringe faces, but I believe, so I'm kind of stalling a little bit because I want to get to what I feel like is the really embarrassing moment of this song. So I'm going to just let it play for a second and I'll point it out when it happens. Cool guitar work. I guess everybody in the studio plays at least a little bit of guitar
and
on this.
It really shows.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
They let Ed just go crazy. Show us what you got. He's
okay, I think this is the part. So he's talking about Jim Morrison. Here we go. Right here.
If the lyrics were good though, and he was comfortable with his voice, that would be so cool. Because he does do it's not rap rock, but he does pick up speed with his vocals sometimes. I'm trying to find the good bit.
I appreciate that. But when I was like, I can't believe that I thought this was the other good song on there, because that moment, and again, it's like he's 25, he's trying out being a rock star. But to me, that moment where he says, I wanna be Jim Morrison, not only is the low light of this album, I think this might be the low point of Radiohead's entire career. I'm like, which is great. Get it out of the way early.
Yeah.
I don't think they ever do anything again that I dislike as much as I dislike his delivery. And just that he's talking about Jim Morrison.
I don't want to hear Radiohead commentating on anything real. And you could say, like in Kid A, yes, there's a lot of talk about global warming, But that's so abstract.
Yeah, those are
compared
huge
to,
concepts.
Yeah, and I mean, they talk about them
He's
in
not,
an abstract
he's not
fashion.
name-checking Bush or something.
Exactly. And and I mean, there is a lot of that on Hail to the Thief, too. But Hail to the Thief, that's not like, oh, George Bush, even though when you know about it, know about their politics, you can find that. But yeah, I don't want to hear Radiohead talking about anything that I know about right away. Like, I need to search for the meaning.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any other tracks on Pablo Honey you want me to play? Or
No, we can talk about as much as you like, though.
I want to talk about more of the band from this period, but I actually wanted to play you a little snippets of some B-sides.
Cool, yeah.
Do you know the B-sides of this album?
Isn't My Iron Lung a B-side before it was on... The My Iron Lung is an EP before the Bends came out with Talk Show Host on it.
Oh, that wasn't just the single of...
They put it on the Bends, but I think the Bends came out in 95, and My Iron Lung EP has Talk Show Host, that song, an earlier version of it, and Fake Plastic Trees, too, which is another song I dislike.
Okay, gotcha. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Spoiler.
Sorry.
So there's not a lot of B-sides from this period because they're such a new band that they're kind of putting everything on it. But I had never listened to the outtakes of this album, and this one I like. And this is called Stupid Car, and they recorded this for the EP that they put out before they did a full album. And so this is Stupid Car. Just play a little bit.
Which is another song a 16-year-old would write.
Yeah, okay, there's an ad.
Adore Me presents
Ooh,
What Do Women Really Want for
that's a good ad.
Valentine's Day?
This is Stupid Car. Bad title, but I actually like this song.
I find it hard to drive your stupid car.
That was not part of this.
That was my phone.
You're shaking your head. This is not doing much for you.
Well, I think the guitar playing, I was waiting for Gavin Rossdale to come in with the vocals.
Yeah, so this is the whole song. I mean, it's actually
I like his
just...
singing a lot, though. It's more comfortable in his own skin, for sure.
It's... Oh,
Fake
here we go.
Plastic
This
Trees
is nice.
kind of...
I can't change gear.
This was recorded before Pablo Honey?
Yes.
Wow, I really like his singing in this.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know if he's playing guitar, but this is the whole song is just one guitar and his vocals. And I like the melody, and I think it's a nice song. And there's not really any...
It has a Radiohead confidence that the album doesn't have.
Yeah, and the only quieter song that is on Pablo Honey is the one... What was it? Hold? The one that you liked. That I like too.
It's before anyone can play guitar.
In any case, so I just think that this would have been nice if they dropped out one of the kind of grunge songs and put this in. I would like it. And the rest of these are pretty... Oh, this one, actually, there's only one other B-side that I wanted to play because the rest of them are not good. This one, I don't know if it's good, but I do think it's interesting to hear. This is called Faithless the Wonder Boy. And it's
I like this better than the
so
last song.
Pixies. I like it better than other stuff that's on the album.
Oh, this is good. Listen to that bass.
Stupid lyrics.
If Where Is My Mind is the end when the towers fall in Fight Club, this would be like if Tyler and Tyler were like, let's make this work. And
Yeah.
like, make it around the house.
Right, totally. Oh, here we go. Somebody got a flange pedal. You heard this? I've heard this. So he's saying I can't fit the music. So I kind of like this
I like
song.
it too. This is good.
I mean,
The vocal harmonies are a little Pinkerton-ish. I know the Pixies are an influence on Weezer as well, but
and that's just the thing. The thing about Pablo Honey as it gets towards the end is I couldn't sing you a single melody, and this melody is catchy. And so it's kind of like if we're gonna do dumb rock songs, I want them to be catchy, and that's missing from a lot of Pablo Honey for me. But you know
And
what?
Yeah.
They get really good after this.
The dumber rock songs are that have a great melody are on the bends. And the bends have
Absolutely.
some spectacular highs that are absolutely a sign of what's to come until their most recent album. But there are well, we're not at the bends yet, so.
No, but I agree. I think that the Benz has moments that I don't think are particularly transcendent or interesting, but the song craft is just still like, oh, but they're just better at songs now.
Mm-hmm.
This is a good, even if they're just like
So much more adventurous,
a
too.
rock band, which the Benz has more than that, but it's like, if they're just a alternative rock band, they're now a much better alternative rock band than they were on Pablo Honey. Do you have any lowlights or any moments that you want to call attention to on this album?
No, I'm just really glad that I listened to it again because it was with a more. I jokingly texted you and said I hate this album, and that was a total hyperbolic joke. But you don't need to listen to it again. Like you, it's my album will be wrapped in cellophane forever.
Yeah, I mean, to me, honestly, this is an on the Friday. This is an on the Friday. Fuck. To me, Pablo Honey is an on a Friday album, and then Creep is a Radiohead song that they snuck onto an on a Friday album.
Absolutely.
I don't know why these things are so hard for me to say right now, but we've been talking a while, so that might have something to do with it.
Yeah, you idiotech.
I'm being so idiotech.
Yeah,
Gosh, I'm acting so idiotech.
No, I mean, I think the bridge into their next album is a really fascinating period of time, and I'm so excited to talk about their next album.
Well, let's talk about kind of what happened to the band after this album comes out.
Yeah, so you had mentioned that even early on, those other gentlemen that worked with them, because Nigel Godrich was a tech on Pablo Honey, or was that only on the
Nigel Godrich is nowhere near Pablo Honey.
I don't even know those fools.
Yeah, doesn't even know him. He's a twinkle in God's eye at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
and just for context, because his name's come up a few times, Nigel Godrich is the engineer, not producer of their next album, The Bends, but produces OK Computer and then every album after that. And he's very, very tied to what Radiohead sound becomes. He's kind of the fifth Beatle.
The sixth member.
Yeah, the sixth member of Radiohead. You know, he's their George Martin. He's very integral to their sound.
And that I think is where Radiohead reminds me the most of the Beatles is George Martin, British gentleman, seemed like a wonderful man.
Knight of the Realm.
Oh yeah, I love him. But I think that George Martin is was such a powerful influence, such a powerful organizer of the Fab Four, to where they couldn't make the leaps musically without him. And there's songs like Day in the Life or any Beatles song where something complex happens musically, and especially the orchestral stuff. And you could hear, oh, George Martin helped them achieve that. And I think Nigel Godrich is very similar in that there's so much chaos happening that they organize for sure, in the Bends especially, but there isn't somebody to help them organize it into something coherent and unique. I mean, it's never incoherent, but I think that just comes to fruition so tangibly in on OK Computer, and similar to George Martin, and so in this period, I think Johnny Greenwood was the only, although Colin's bass was cooking on every track. I think listening to him with over-the-ear headphones really helps.
The Greenwood brothers, to me, are like kind of carrying Radiohead through this initial period.
So he was sought because I think he was 18 or 19, where they were all like 22. And as you know, there's a very big difference between...
Who, Johnny was?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a very, very big difference between a 19-year-old and a 22-year-old, at least in their minds, to each other.
Yes.
And so they wanted him in the band. So that, to me, means that he probably represented the most talent. And Johnny Greenwood now is musically the most complex individual. He can read and write, sheet music, and he's a composer in the truest sense of the word. But he was very motivated for the band to grow musically at a technical level. my guitar teacher in high school, Scott Namony, loved two bands, Pinback and Radiohead.
Oh,
and he would often talk about the period in between Pablo Honey and the Bends as a way to encourage me. And this would have been 2006, as a way to encourage me to think outside the box, learn different type of music. He said because Radiohead in this era went into the studio and challenged themselves, and I haven't been able to find too much evidence of that beyond vague statements from Tom York about, we were just dissatisfied, and they really honed their craft. They did not rush the album, which I love, and really grew as musicians. And I think that's really cool because were I Radiohead, thank goodness that I wasn't in the band, I would have been like,
who's this yank who's wandered into the studio?
Hey guys. No, but I mean, if I were in a band like that, I would have been like, I'd rather not have a one-hit wonder and be famous for that and make royalties than have one. Like, I'd rather be me and be broke than have a one-hit wonder that makes money. And I would have been so panicked that that's all we were, I would have rushed another album. And they did not do that, which I think is so cool.
Well, you very naturally are bridging into what I wanted to talk about, which is...
Hit me, dog.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just what you said. So Creep's a big fat hit, and their record label is like, get out there, sends them on a big U.S. tour.
They're like, we have 7 songs, though.
Yeah, and this is their... And I've heard Tom York, he talked about this in his interview with Mark Maron, that... it was not fun. They didn't know what they were doing. And I think this is also where Radiohead's kind of like fussy reputation kind of starts too, is they're just, they don't seem to be about that rock star life. And you know what? Here at Idio Talk, we love to wet our beaks. We're constantly, constantly getting our beaks wet. I've been chastising Zach because he keeps giving me all his hot Radiohead takes, and I keep saying save it for the pod.
Like 5-word text messages.
Yeah, but it's just we got to save our energy for the pod. But I keep telling him, you just keep trying to wet your beak. Well, I'm going to wet the listener's beak right now, Zach, by showing just. So we left on kind of like what Pablo Honey sounds like in general, and I just want the listeners to hear how they open their next album and just what a...
Yes.
Well, I'll save the commentary, but this is how, after being the band that just is known for that one song, Creep, and little else, this is how Radiohead decides to open their sophomore effort.
Drums are already noticeably better.
Yep. And already there's atmosphere with those kind of like
Still
wind
U2-ish,
synth
but
sounds. Don't think we really heard a piano on Pablo Honey, and then key change. So right away they're kind of like take your creep and shove it.
Yeah, but still though, and the singing is phenomenal in this song as it goes, but still a little bit in the Blur Oasis, although it's a higher pitch than Oasis would do, but not indistinguishable from those bands.
And there you go. That's Zach wetting your beak with one of his many incisive takes about Radiohead and the Bends. Listeners, we know that you have many choices in Radiohead podcasts, and we're just so thankful that you chose us today. Man, this was a lot of fun, and we don't even like this album that much. So I'm really excited to talk about music of theirs that I'm a unabashed super fan of.
I am so stoked, and I hope that you'll come on the journey with us. And I can't wait to do this again.
All right. We love you, listeners. I'm Walker Glenn.
I'm Zach Glenn.
And we'll see you next time. Bye. Idio Talk is a Glenn Brothers production. Get in touch with us at idiotalk.podcast@gmail.com or follow us on Instagram at idiotalk.podcast. And thanks for listening to